Welcome to the Cherry Picker, the horror movie podcast where we like to kill people, but not really. I'm your host, Zack Cherry. Who's this guy over here?
Maybe she should save herself. I did. Eddie of Edward is True is this guy.
Jodie Foster and Silence
Hey, you know what? No, if it were Jodie Foster, it'd be maybe she should save herself. I did. That is dead on.
Okay. Today we are talking about MaXXXine.
MaXXXine.
Triple X-ine.
No, MaXXXine. I like it better.
I don't care what you like. I'm just going by, it's the 7/13 ghost thing.
Ooh, we're coming in warm.
Yeah. We are. This was released July 5th, 2024. So new release.
Yeah.
And obviously, you know, we've been so hyped about this for a while. We already covered X and Pearl. You know, go way back to like 2022.
Yes.
When those came out, we covered them pretty much when they were released as well. So
yeah, after seeing them in the theater.
Yeah, we're getting this while it's hot. So, how are you, Edward?
I'm okay. I've actually. It's funny. You teased in the Pearl episode, because I went back and I listened to our X episode because I just wanted to see what did we talk about, what are we doing, and I went back to a little bit of Pearl, because Pearl doesn't necessarily pertain to this story wise, but you know, as far as thematics and symbolism and stuff like that, you know. But you did tease a ranking of these. You were already kind of anticipating what your ranking was thus far with just the two movies, and you said you'd probably come full force with the trilogy ranking once it was a trilogy. And it made me think about my ranking, and then it just made me think about ranking in general, because I've been doing all those add yours on Instagram, and I'm taking a bit of a break from them now because...
Thank God.
This is the thing. Shut up. This is the thing. They used to be really specific, kind of like, okay, movie night. Which 4 are you watching? And it's like, ooh, movie night. That means, you know, I have to, curate a little bit. I have to think about the rhythm, think about the highs, the lows, and do like, okay, this is movie 1, this is movie 2 to take the edge off, and this is movie 3 to stick it to them. You know, that kind of thing. Now people are just going, choose 3. And I'm like, for what? Like, it's like when people used to ask me in person, when there would be like group conversations at work or places where they'd say, what are the 3 best ones? I'm like, the 3 best in terms of what? They were like, well, which 3 are your favorite? I'm like, well, those are 2 completely different things. Like, best made subjectively is completely the opposite, actually, of the 3 favorites, because they might be my favorites for reasons that are not objectively good filmmaking. And I, you know, because I'm a Virgo, I'm whittling. And so I'm taking a break because people aren't specific enough with their questions. Pick 3. For what? That's what I have to say. That's how I am. How are you, Zack Cherry?
I'm great. No, just been busy. The campaign for Macabre, which, I mean, if you're just tuning in for the first time, I'm making a short film with my filmmaker friend Eric Champney, and we are crowdfunding this, so it's gonna be on Kickstarter, but we were having some kinks getting verified through our producers, so hopefully that's all going to be sorted out and we're going to be able to start it in August. So stay tuned for that. But that's kind of been it's monopolizing a lot of time other than going to see MaXXXine in the theater multiple times.
Should call Mia Goth. She's a producer now.
She is.
She's a producer of
Yeah.
MaXXXine.
It's well, there was like tons of producers on this. Like, it's like executive producer. Like, wasn't Scott what's his name, or Kid Cudi from the first one? Is it like Muscudi or something? I don't know how to pronounce his name, but that he was like one of the first executive producers.
I didn't even notice. I just noticed her name, and then
she had hers on her own, and it just said producer Mia Goth. As opposed to like produced by. But the ranking. What did I say? What was my projected ranking?
You were favoring X over Pearl at the time.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's still the case with you.
Okay.
And you didn't know how. Neither of us knew like what MaXXXine was going to be. We were both definitely, I feel like moving from X to Pearl, we were looking forward to Pearl, but we were also kind of skeptical because we didn't know what to make of it after that trailer, you know? And then once we saw Pearl, we were like, well, I'm all in for MaXXXine. So, yeah. What are you thinking? You want to reveal now?
So I didn't give you a projected ranking? Because you said
no. Well, because we didn't know what the third one was going to be, but it looked like you were definitely favoring X over Pearl. So it looked like it was going to be X, Pearl, and MaXXXine.
I see. Okay, well, yeah, showing my cards right now.
Okay.
So the top rated would be Pearl.
Wow.
Then X, and then MaXXXine.
Wow. That's awesome. You never change your mind.
That's not true.
Well, you rarely change your mind.
Yeah.
Not as often as I do. I change my tune quite often. My mood can fluctuate within a few months.
You've got that mutable Virgo, as you say, energy. So what is your X ranking?
I think it's this is the thing. X and Pearl very, very much on equal footing with each other as far as the filmmaking of them. I think they both do what they do incredibly well. They're kind of like really great case studies for other filmmakers as to if you want to make, like a film like X, an ensemble piece that has like a slasher element to it and even, some homages. Here's how to do it without losing your thread. Or if you want to do Pearl, it's like a character study that is largely kind of like this amorphous psychological landscape that you're moving through, seeing things through her eyes, but are you? How often are you outside of her experience? How often are you inside? And how do you even tell the difference? I think they're both fascinating. That said, I'd probably put X at the top for me, just in terms of what it set out to do and what it achieved. I feel like it's harder. X had to exist without Pearl. Like, it had to be released and I had to receive it without any kind of prior knowledge of what it had. I went into Pearl with everything that X had built up and I carried it in with me as far as what I knew about that character. And she was an incredibly rich character. There was a lot that we talked about and covered, and there's still more to cover with Pearl, the character, with it, whichever movie you talk about, or both of them combined. And I believe that character is that character. That said, it's just, I think, the fact that it had to stand on its own, and it did, so that just puts X a little bit over the top for me, which is odd because usually it's like the day of opposites, because usually I am the persona-driven, character-driven, like behavior-based
TikTok,
fan.
Edward.
Sorry, but there's a lot to address. Anyway, that's my ranking. There you go. Of course, MaXXXine's at the bottom.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Like, that's my ranking. You don't even give it a whole thing.
We'll talk about why.
Absolutely, we will. So, okay, and here's one more question. How do you watch them now? Like, do you watch them in release order, or do you watch them in, like, chronological timeline order?
I was wondering about that because I haven't actually... I've seen X the most, too. That's another thing. Yeah. I've seen Pearl, like, twice. I've seen X probably 4 or 5 times.
Right.
And I'm still not used to it, which is good. And I've seen MaXXXine twice now. I was thinking on the drive home, I would probably lead with X and then watch MaXXXine just for her arc. And then Pearl would kind of... I can't put it any other way. Just kind of boost me back up.
Yeah.
Just buoy me back up. I would not want to close out a screening of the trilogy with MaXXXine.
Yeah.
At least not right now, not on this day, for reasons we'll get into. I would prefer to close out with Pearl and just kind of go, what about you?
That's fair. Well, I mean, sidebar, apparently there's going to be a 4th one. And Ty West was, had stressed in interviews doing press for MaXXXine that this was not the last one, and they're like, but it's said in the trailers, and he's like, look, I have nothing to do with the trailers. That's, I wish I did, but it's like, that's that's the distributor. Like, they do all that. So it's not it's not like it was a trilogy and this is the final thing, because like you said, Pearl is not really, if we're looking at it as a trilogy, the connective tissue is there, but it's not like a strong through line, because it's almost like, if you're looking at X as the middle chapter, there's this like passing of the baton from Pearl to MaXXXine. But if I was to watch them at this point, I think that the release order is the correct order, because there's an element of mystery to X in terms of like, who are these people of the Douglases, I guess is their name, Pearl and Howard. And it gives you something to look forward with Pearl, because it's almost like, wow, like, look at all that's happening here. Because I've never really considered Pearl to be a prequel, because it's not. It's a completely separate story. It's with this character, and it's a character study going back, but it's not like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
The beginning. You said that before,
yeah. We're not like setting up how did this happen. We're more so just seeing this character. It's almost like more so one of those like limited series origin stories, but it just so happened to be a movie. So I think that X, then Pearl, and then MaXXXine, for obvious reasons of just because I'm not like you. I'm not like I need to be boosted up and have the this elated feeling by the time I come to the end of a franchise run. I just want to see things in sequence. But just since nothing in Pearl really changes the way that you look at X, at least not so much in terms of like the immediate story that's happening in X. Like, I think that it's totally fine to watch that second. So
that's true. Everything that happened in Pearl seemed like it wasn't like there were any. I never would have thought of that. It's more like, no, that makes sense. Yeah. That's interesting as fuck, but it makes all the sense in the world. Yeah, I agree with you there.
Yeah, cool. Well, before we get into the nitty gritty of MaXXXine, I do want to do the usual housekeeping stuff. So if you are new to the Cherry Picker, or if you're old to the Cherry Picker and you are enjoying it and you want to give back a little, you can always go to my Patreon. That's patreon.com/ZackCherry, ZackCherry, and support me over there. It also supports the podcast. You get early access to all of our episodes. At any tier, if you're supporting at the Freddy Krueger tier, you get access to the Cherry Picker After Dark, which is the bonus episode we do every month. You never know what it's going to be. Sometimes we do Final Girl Survivor. Sometimes we do weird rankings and shit, and cult movies. And this month we're doing Drop Dead Gorgeous. It's the 25th anniversary. It's not really horror adjacent, but it's a movie about murder. And
it's oddly Survivor adjacent as well.
Yeah, I feel like there like movies that, like, especially from the 90s, that just had to do with like, teens and people behaving badly. I always kind of group that into like a very horror adjacent thing, because you just like, I Know What You Did Last Summer, shit like that, cover ups and just like murders and trying to get ahead in the world. If you're gonna knock off your competition in a beauty pageant, and it's got all the people we love in it, like Denise Richards.
We're gonna go down the list. Yes,
we'll go down the list when we cover the episode. So I believe that's next week, but it's this month. I do want to give a shout out to my top tier Patreon supporters. So to all of my Michael Myers tier, so Kyle Beard, Sam Levy, Ellie Hamouche, Shane Allingham, Tim McKay, Stephanie Starbright, Horror Slut 95, Bruce the Genetic, Jack Hammer Rando, Gary Blasick, Josh Carr, Michael Boswell, Brandy, BB, and then Ghostface tiers, Eric Champney, who I mentioned earlier, doing that movie Macabre with, Daniel Saturn, Baby Ghoul, and Garrison Nichols. So thank you very much to all of you, plus all Patreon supporters. You make this very possible for us to do every week like this. So, let's keep the ball rolling. I'd also like to thank Jason Voorhees Gallotello, our editor. So thank you, Jason. And I believe, am I forgetting anything?
I don't know.
No, then we're not. MaXXXine.
Okay.
So clearly, this is both of our least favorites of the trilogy. Or is it fair to say least favorite, or should we say the third favorite?
I mean, I'll just call it, third tier.
Yeah.
I mean, least favorite is accurate as far as it pertains, in relation to the other movies. But I did enjoy myself. I had a really, really good time watching it. I don't think it's a bad movie. It's like when we have to rank the Screams. I don't feel like any of those are bad movies. I just feel like I appreciate the strengths in more than others. What do you say?
I mean, that we only have 3 movies in this franchise, so it's a lot easier to kind of appreciate everything because there are strengths to that. I don't agree with you in terms of the Scream franchise one, because there's definitely now a bad movie that I, abhor. But it's what's interesting is that just because while we're on the subject of Scream, because one thing that I heard about MaXXXine that actually sort of echoed a lot of criticisms that I heard for Scream 6 was that it all fell apart in the third act. Like, everything was great up until the third act. And while I agree that, like, both movies had very weak third acts, I don't think that it's a matter of, like, all of a sudden they dropped the ball and, like, they were doing so well and then they couldn't stick to the landing. I think that, the problem with MaXXXine overall, I feel, because everything is phenomenal about it, just in terms of like the production. The problem is the script for me, just the overall story. And I feel that in a case like this, like, you can say that the third act, kind of that's where they failed, but you have to remember that it kind of goes in order. You have to have a successful first act to have a successful second act, and the second act has to be successful to lead into the third act. It's not like, suddenly just shit hits the fan. It's the setup for everything. And I feel that came a point probably like halfway through the movie where they missed the mark, or it just became so unfocused and started to meander that it just like they were setting themselves up for failure at the end. So it's not that the last act was particularly bad or flopped. It's just that nothing was set up properly. And that was my exact same sentiments for Scream 6, because I heard people say, oh, the first 2 acts are amazing. And I watched that movie and I'm just like, I'm not enjoying any of this. Not really.
All right. Well, we know that.
Because there's a lot.
I didn't have the same response to Screevy as you did.
No, you don't. You don't, and a lot of people don't either. But there's things when I watch that, it's just sort of like, okay, there's nothing there's no consequence to anything that's happening. But like, you could take things out of that movie as you could take things out of MaXXXine, and it would still be the same thing. Like, if you don't have every scene kind of being creating a cause and effect for what happens next, then you're not really creating like a domino effect that's going to bring you from the start of the movie to the end. And that's how I felt about Scream 6, because it was just sort of like random things and coincidences. And that's how I feel about MaXXXine as well, just because there's nothing that really, like, when you do get to the final act and she goes to that house, it's like nothing really kind of precipitated that moment to happen that didn't happen when she met Kevin Bacon's character and he gave her the address and said, like, we want you to come to this house later. And then she just discarded she didn't even discard it. She just left it sitting on her coffee table and then decided towards the end of the movie that she was going to throw it out. And then literally 2 seconds later picked it out of the trash can and went. But there's everything that happens in between is just filler. And that's kind of that's where I'm it is. It's just like, that's what I felt a lot of with this movie. Like, I think that it started off very strong. And I don't know if it was just strong or just like they were really honed in on sort of the ideas, or like Ty West was honed in on the ideas that they wanted to kind of encapsulate with this movie, and then it sort of just like trailed off into a lot of falderall.
Well, okay, this is the thing. We can get into like essentially like what I think is the crux of the whole issue with this movie, because let me tell you a little story about a filmmaker named James Wan. I was watching a movie of his that was non-horror, and I remember it was part of like another cinematic universe that I had responded mostly favorably to up until that point.
Are we talking about
DC.
Fast and the Furious?
No, we're talking DC.
Oh,
and we got
Aquaman?
to yeah. So when Aquaman happened,
just use titles.
I'm getting there. Jesus. I'm setting a mood. I'm Ty West right now. You have to let me set a mood for you.
I'm not saying another word.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there watching Aquaman, and I remember I thought it opened strong, and I'm just kind of like, wow, it feels so epic, and I love Nicole Kidman. I wish they'd just make a movie about her and everything. But now I'm, plugged into like this character and his origin story and everything like that. And we went into like the first Jason Momoa sequence, and I was just kind of like, what is this shit? It just felt like your typical action, banter and like, lives being lost of people I don't care. All of a sudden, it was the antithesis of what I just watched. And it was just kind of like to set up a villain for him. And I'm like, what the fuck? And then I get to the next scene and I see Dolph Lundgren on screen. And I'm like, oh, Dolph Lundgren. Okay. You're making a dumb 90s action movie that like Dolph Lundgren would have made like back in the day. That's what this is. And for the rest of the movie, it straddled either like big, epic, thing that I had no problem getting into emotionally, or big, dumb 90s action thing that I'm just kind of like, look at that thing, it explodes. Look at the high octane stunt work or whatever, like all that kind of shit. So once I kind of told myself that's what the movie's going to straddle those things, it was very hard to be disappointed after that. I feel like something similar happened to me during my initial screening of this movie. It opened, I was just aghast because I was ready. I was ready for this movie. And I don't like to pre-game. I don't like to get excited and like post, oh, I'm looking forward to seeing it. I just want to go in and see it, let it happen. And then once the fucking soundstage doors opened, and I'm just kind of like, oh, we've got this wonderful now, visual cue that we've revisited, like in Pearl, and that was established in X every time we got these giant doors opening to kind of like usher in the movie or usher us out to the movie. And in she strolls, and she did her screen test, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. She's magic, and there was nothing about the camera work or the direction that was, distracting me. It was just letting it happen. Favorite thing. And then the movies. And as it started to go on, particularly once we started to kind of expose the heavy of the film, the man with the gloves, I started to go, it's been a long time since I've seen this, but it's really evoking everything with like even the term the Night Stalker and all of that kind of stuff. It just made me put me in a very kind of nighttime telly is the only way I can put it. It's the UK term, and I love it because it says exactly what it is, like that. Those like kind of TV movies that are exploitative, but but also because they're TV movies from the 80s, they're not really that well made. Or even like some slasher movies that are like might be really well made, but don't have the greatest budget behind them. So there is always like a layer of, it could be camp, it could be cheese, it could be whatever you want to ascribe to it. But it's always kind of taking itself seriously enough that you can kind of chuckle at it. And that's what I started to get from the hands and the gloves. I started thinking about, like, the first movie evoked memories of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Friday the 13th, and even Tourist Trap for me. Pearl was so incredibly its own thing that it didn't evoke anything except for maybe Psycho 4 the beginning, like the flashbacks when Henry Thomas is playing Norman Bates, and it's kind of happening in Technicolor.
We talked about sort of like this mishmash of Psycho and Wizard of Oz. Like Norman Bates meets Dorothy Gale.
Yeah, but at the same time, I didn't kind of watch Pearl and think the same way I did with X. Like visually, immediately I saw those barn doors open and I saw the bodies laying around. I was just kind of like, this looks like it could have been lifted out of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the OG. I didn't feel like anything could have been lifted out of Pearl or lifted out of Psycho and lifted out of Wizard of Oz and put in. It was more, again, thematically, illusions, And I thought, great, because also there aren't a lot of movies of that era that are attempting to do what Pearl did. So it kind of became its own thing, and I was really in favor of that. But with MaXXXine, I started thinking about like movies like The Prowler, and like I started putting them down on my phone. Murder Syndrome, even the original like My Bloody Valentine, just with like a figure in black with gloves and like a undisclosed like persona and everything like that. And another one called Night School. All of these like gloved silhouetted figures that are just kind of like moving through in an evening thing, and it's very urban, and it's got that contemporary feel, that just kind of like girls are chewing gum on streets, and and there's, I don't know, it had a very, even the visual look of it seemed to be even more, I don't know if gritty is the term, but like there was definitely like not a smoothness to the resolution of what I was watching. In fact, a lot of the time it looked like it could have been shot on like video and then transposed onto film, because weird things happen with noise, with visual noise, and just the way, I don't know, the way things are captured. Like there was a lot of noise on screen.
Well, apparently they did use old style cameras, like from the 80s, to film the movie.
It felt like it. Yeah. It felt even grittier than X. X had a grit to it.
Yeah.
But it was a very different.
That was like post production. This was just like, this was the equipment that they used.
Yeah, from the source.
They didn't want to do any sort of like tinkering with it after. They wanted to get an authentic 80s feel to it, which I really appreciated. I thought that it looked great for that.
Right.
Oh, I think that like, if anything, like in terms of like movies that are set in the 80s and things like that, like this might be one of the best ones that I've seen, just of like recapturing that era.
Oh God. I mean, when she first left the audition and made her way to, what was it called? The
landing.
What was she? Yeah, the landing strip. Yeah. Thank you. Over to the TNA agency. I love Teddy, her entertainment lawyer. But just as she's like making her way through what looked like the top of a parking structure or a rooftop, and she goes into like the bar, and then there's the strip joint place, and then behind that there's the porn they're shooting, and even between that was the kitchens, and then finally there's just her makeup table in every place, where she's getting ready for either to shoot some porn or to strip her clothes off, whatever it might be that particular day, whatever she's on the docket for.
She was doing the nurse thing.
Yeah. And I could feel, as she was moving through each one of those venues, like I felt like it was something similar to X that we talked about then. I could feel the temperature of the room. I could smell the smoke. I could feel like, particularly in the strip joint room, I was just kind of like, there's got to be tremendous humidity in that room from all the work that girl is doing on that stage. Like that immersive quality was not lost. Ty West was still, like hitting on all sixes with that one. But as far as any problem that I had initially, and I will say I've seen it twice now. The second time round, all my likes were likier, and all my dislikes were, I disliked what I disliked originally.
Yeah, I think because I saw it twice as well. And just to see like, would my opinion change? Because I wanted to go in the first time. I knew that I had really high expectations for the movie, so maybe a second watch through would kind of yield a more practical opinion, and just being like, okay, well, I mean, considering what this is, like, how would it be? But it's still, I felt the same. All the things that I liked, I really loved. I thought they were executed very successfully. But the problems were just even more apparent. And, I don't like going into movies, and I've done this, where it's just like, I would do that, or I would do that. But that's just my natural inclination as a screenwriter and wannabe filmmaker, is to just be like, how would I do that different? What would make this scene better? So there is a lot of times where you just like look at a movie from like a creative point of view, and you can see those things, and just, they seem so apparent. And I mean, I don't know if the movie that we got was exactly what was, in Ty West's brain, or if there might have been some meddling, because I mean, this is clearly a movie with a budget, whereas X and Pearl were made for $1 million each. I might even think that he was given $2 million to make X, and he's just like, how about I do this? How about I just split that in half and make 2 movies? And they were like, sure, let's do that. Let's try that. And now it's kind of like, you proved yourself. Here's all this stuff. But with that comes, a lot of feedback from producers. And, like you saw how many names were on the thing. I don't know how many of those names had power over the movie, but, there were, it definitely felt like there were possibly things in this movie that Ty West didn't have control over. And it was just like, this is what this is. But at the same time, I don't know if this was originally the plan, that he was going to make MaXXXine, or this movie set in the 80s. So it might have just been a thing like, oh, this is successful. This is how Hollywood works. Yeah, let's make another one. But I think inherently the problem for me, you mentioned the silhouette in movies like Prowler and My Bloody Valentine. What I'm getting more is evoking the giallo subgenre, because it very much is that, like the rain-coated silhouette with the brimmed hat. That's, we saw that in Deep Red. It's kind of, I don't know if it like it existed before Argento, but it was very much present with like all of the Argento killers, or at least most of them. So there's a very giallo aspect to this. So that was one thing that was kind of like honed in on. Another thing that was honed in on was sort of this idea of this vigilante story for MaXXXine. And I know that the movie Cobra, which I've never seen, Sylvester Stallone, was somewhat an inspiration for this. So I don't really know. I know that it's considered sort of a slasher thriller movie. Have you ever seen it?
No.
Yeah. No. But it's like this type of thing where, I thought that like MaXXXine was going to go and just sort of take out the Night Stalker herself, or something like that. Like we saw the scene where Buster approached her in the alley, and we dealt with that. The other thing that I was thinking, which was sort of set up, is that this was going to be like a Once Upon a Time in Hollywood situation, like the Tarantino movie, where rather than kind of doing a historical reimagining, like fictionalizing that of the Tate murders, it was instead going to be the Night Stalker. So we were going to see like MaXXXine actually interacting with Richard Ramirez. And so here's right now like 3 different threads, 3 things that this movie could be, hypothetically, that have been solidified in the first act. And none of those things were, like, they didn't lean into any of those. The movie just kind of went on, and I felt like any one of those threads would have been a really interesting movie to follow, because we don't really continue with the giallo route. Like the mystery is very much sidelined. It's like Kevin Bacon kind of becomes the heavy of the movie throughout like all of the second act. There's not really his character. I mean, we'll talk more about him later, because I think that he was terrific, but like the character itself was pretty much could have been taken out of the movie. It might have solved a lot of the problems. We didn't, clearly, like the vigilante aspect of it was also not followed, because it was just that one scene, and then it didn't really go anywhere from there. And this clearly wasn't a fictionalized reimagining of real life events, because nothing to do with the Night Stalker really had any effect on the entire movie. I did want to ask you though, because at the very end of the movie, when she's confronting her father with the shotgun, and there's the helicopter, and there's this like flash forward, and I guess it's sort of like her imagining what next. And it's like the news reports of like the Night Stalker has been apprehended, or, Richard Ramirez, like they name him in the thing, and then she's on the news, and then she's at the red carpet, and then it kind of comes back to reality. And I just like, I just thought of this today. She had some sort of like vision of the future in which she discovered the identity of the Night Stalker, do you think that she like, you know, used that, like she has some like clairvoyancy that she used that and helped apprehend him, or she's just like, it'll sort itself out. They'll save themselves.
I mean, you joke, but I opened with not, I think, the line that a lot of people would have gone with, which is, I will not accept a life I do not deserve, which is a key line as far as this movie. But I said maybe she should save herself. I did, only to point out kind of like the movie that was set up at a, you know, late point in the film. But I remember when she said that, I wondered, is that the direction we're going to go? Is she just going to kind of let them, you know, save themselves, or is that going to be an ironic line and she's going to step in and save somebody? And the answer is not really either. Like she, because, and this is something that actually is why it bothered me more the second time, because the first time I was watching it, I just kind of felt things are getting much broader, and I think this is why a lot of people are criticizing the third act for it all falling apart, particularly the climax, just because the presence of her father. It's not like it was unprecedented, because you mentioned Kevin Bacon. I thought he did a great job too, but I did notice a kind of tonal shift when he first came on screen, not with the mystery person in the car, but when he's sitting at lunch at the top of this building that I believe is what they used for the opening credits of It's a Living, a sitcom about waitresses in the 80s. Anyway, I could have sworn while he was sitting there across from her that he was in a completely different movie than anyone I had seen up until that point. And not in a way that, again, pulled me out of the movie. I was very happy to see him because I thought, oh, I made allusions to Friday the 13th with X, and this is kind of like a nice little cinematic connective tissue, you know, like a little treat for me. Okay, lovely. I'll keep watching. And he was delivering a very specific character, if not a little broad, like a little bit broader than anyone else we'd met up until that point. And I was like, is he doing it because it's Kevin Bacon? Is he doing it because he just really wants to sell how, you know, kind of like deplorable, there's no other word, like, you know, like despicable this man is, because he nailed it. I didn't want her sitting at that table any more than she wanted to be sitting at that table with him. And But again, it didn't derail me. It just kind of stood out like, oh, well, those are choices. And then once he was taken out of the movie, and we'll talk about that, but then it's like we got the next level of broad with her father. From the moment he just goes like, "Your star," you know, I'm just like, what is this snagglepuss play to the left of the of the house? You know, kind of like, hey, everyone. And I understand he's a fucking evangelist, and, you know, a penchant for the dramatic is, you know, kind of comes with the territory. But it was a lot. It was, and it didn't get better the second time round. When I knew it was coming, it slapped me across the face even harder. I was like, you have gone from like telling the story about this kind of quiet but not shy, reserved but determined character who had, you know, this kind of dark backstory, ironically, for someone who's like preaching about reaching for the light and everything like that in the first movie, and it connected with this. Now all of a sudden he's become, again, this kind of nighttime telly fraction of a character, a stereotype, like who's just kind of like, you know, all those crazy Southern revivalists, this guy, look at this guy. And I'm just like, the nuance has gone out the window. Now it's just, and again, I feel like if Ty was in control, or as in control of this movie's direction as he was the previous two, maybe that was the point. Maybe the point was for it to become outsized. I mean, the fact that they're all racing up the hill where the Hollywood sign is, and that's where the final showdown, if you can call it that, takes place. That's larger than life. That, and I kept leaning in one direction and then the other, kind of going like, well, the Hollywood sign, okay, that's bold. That's I can kind of see why that would work, you know, like as a climax for this. But then watching the confrontation between the two of them, the fact that there wasn't really much of a confrontation, the fact that she didn't get to take him down, the fact that the cops both kind of failed upwards and took him and themselves out, and then she had to go in and she didn't avenge anything, she didn't defend herself, she didn't get to beat him down the way she felt beaten down her entire childhood. She didn't even get to shame him. She just finished him off. Now, again, that's a whole negative direction. What can bring me back in the other direction is there is power. I mean, she's a final girl. There is power in recognizing what your villain has given you. And the fact that she's able to say to him, you didn't fail me, Daddy. You gave me just what I needed. Divine intervention. And then she blows his head off. I don't agree with it. It's not the choice I would have made. And it's not something that I'm going to get relief or exhilaration from when I revisit this movie. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I'm like, well, at least she's going to be able to move on from this. I don't know. Go ahead, please.
The problem is that MaXXXine doesn't really undergo any sort of character transformation in this movie. She's the same person from the start to the finish. The only thing that's different is she has this role now. She has the role that she wanted, but she got that role. She was hired at the beginning of the movie. So it was like she got to keep the role, and it was just, had to do with her, squashing, as the director said.
Yeah, I like that.
Any whatever it is that's going on in her life. So it didn't feel like there was really a huge obstacle for her. The death of her friends, it's just like, again, it was just so incidental. I feel like every character in this movie, with the exception of like maybe the director, had absolutely no effect on MaXXXine at all. Like the movie could have been the same with all of those roles could have been combined into one, or you could have just like replaced them with like any number of like background extra characters. I get to the climax that you're talking about. I mean, and this is, partly where this movie fails as a murder mystery, is that the father was not like you hear his voice at the beginning and him from X, but it's not like this is a character that's been present in the movie. I've heard a lot of complaints about, Scream 2, for instance, where the killers in that movie are very, like reserved and like kept to the background and not really used all that much until they show up at the end. And I still think that it works extraordinarily well there because they are there and they're used to their fullest potential when we get the reveal. And here it's like, yeah, it feels like he's, putting on like all the glitz and the glamour for it, but it's like, I feel no emotional connection to this person being revealed as the killer. Because like MaXXXine isn't really feeling any, like, it's just like, oh, it's you. How did you find me? And that's another thing. Like there's this whole subplot of hiring Kevin Bacon and getting him to track down, like, where is MaXXXine Minx? And the thing is, like, she's a big time porn actress. Like they say it at the very beginning of the movie, like your agent tells us that you're a big name in adult entertainment industry. And then you even see like the security guard. She's like, I'm MaXXXine Minx. And he's like, yes, you are. And the other guy is like, I'm a big fan of your work. So clearly, like, she's a name. She's famous. She just wants to be famous on another plateau. Yeah. But it should not be difficult to track her down. And it's making this whole rigmarole of like finding her and like how it's going to happen. And it's just like, I don't think it's very hard at all. Like you just go to Hollywood, you go to these places, and you're like, oh, this is where MaXXXine is this night. Like it's just it's a lot of much ado about nothing. And
I mean, okay, go ahead.
This is looking at the script, because I think that the script is where the issues are. You start to ask your questions like, does this make logical sense? Yes or no? No. Let's fix that, move on to the next thing, and make a movie that feels like there's a through line that's actually, keeping the pace going, and you're excited to just uncover the next thing and the next thing. And I felt like at least at the beginning of the movie, we were doing that because we were establishing everything that was going on. Like I loved the scene where she's, got her little vigilante justice moment, or, where she turned the tables on that guy in the alleyway. Yes. But I think it was like with the introduction of Kevin Bacon are just showing that he's sort of chauffeuring this guy around. And then we cut to the scene at this mansion where this party has supposedly happened, where these girls have been invited to. And we see this videotape of them in the closet. And apparently there was it wasn't filmed, but it was written to be, there was more to that sequence. With this girl blindfolded, but all I could think of was what they have done here, what they have presented here was the least interesting thing that could have possibly been shown to us. Because I think of slasher films, and I think of Argento, if they're going for this giallo tone, and they have this huge cast. That's another thing. The movie was marketed with this huge cast of all of these people that you would think, make a meal out of this. Have a set piece where this girl, the one with the short hair, who's having the hot dog in the street with the big fur coat, because she's talking about going to this party and taking the gondola up. I would have liked to see that scene of her coming to the house initially. So we're already establishing this location early on, going up the gondola, and then having some sort of wild chase sequence where she goes to this house and you can create all this mystery about what is inside there and have her get chased and then killed, rather than just showing her tied up in the closet. And because that's just such a waste of just having this character in the movie. And there was two of them. There was the one that worked at the strip club, and then the one at Show World or whatever it was called.
This is.
I was just going to say, I think of Tenebrae, one of my favorites. There's so many isolated scenes in that movie where there's just a character who's, might be on their own for 10 minutes. Or, that one girl who's chased by the dog, and then she ends up in the killer's house, and then he comes home. It's just stuff like that is interesting. If you're going to have this big cast, use them. And things like that just wasn't there for any of it. That's why I feel so many of these characters could just be plucked out of the movie and you wouldn't miss them, because they may as well have just been bodies laying on a slab in a morgue.
Well, see, this is again why I was less bothered by the first 2/3 of it, just because, again, putting that file at the back of my head just to kind of remind me, okay, you're watching something that's creating homage to, probably the less celebrated, the less acknowledged slasher films of the 80s that were the kind of things that I don't know if I even really had all that much interest as a child in, because they seemed largely adult, and because they didn't seem to be kind of about fun. They seemed to be about finding this antithesis to glamour that is still somehow kind of glamorous and alluring about the underbelly. So anytime anything started to feel kind of half-formed or less than three-dimensional, maybe even less than two-dimensional in this film, I had to wonder, is that part of what's going on thematically? What's going on in terms of what sub-genre that we're trying to kind of plug into? Because this movie, unfortunately, is paying homage to, I think, a subgenre that isn't really all that dimensionalized, and that really isn't all about pushing character study, or even really developed plot or really developed characters to the forefront. It's really more about intrigue and atmosphere, and because it succeeded as far as that was concerned, it makes me forgive a lot more, certainly, of what happens in the first two acts of the movie. Because you mentioned all I thought about when you were talking about her, I never thought of her, they were her friends either. I thought they were her co-workers. I know one of them was Tabby, and I don't remember the name of the other one, the blonde, in the beginning. I just remember they made an impression visually, so much so that because I couldn't stop looking at the first one's hair. I just kept thinking, God, they nailed it. It's got that wonderful glow to it, but it's also just a little crispy. And then Tabby, I'm watching her, and I wasn't even thinking about it at the time, but she cut a particular figure on screen, and I just thought okay. So by the time we got the reveal in the closet and the two of them were blindfolded, I knew exactly who the two of them were, and I knew exactly what was going on in terms of oh shit, someone is hacking their way toward you. They have kidnapped these people either to get to you or to make me as an audience member feel that there is a clear path to you, whether it's intentional or not, because two people I've seen you associating with in the movie have now been plucked off of the streets and into this dangerous environment. Because it served that purpose, that felt, again, very nighttime telly to me, and I felt like it was successful. Now, I do agree with you about a completely other character, because this is the thing. Did you recognize the coroner when they found her two friends?
Yeah, that was well, I recognized him. I was like, oh, he looks familiar, but then it wasn't until after when I looked at the IMDb. It's what's his face from Halloween 2018.
Can I get peanut butter on my penis? Yeah. The dad from Halloween. Yeah, the one who nobody missed until our girls missed him in the next movie. But no, I didn't recognize him either right away when I saw him on screen the first time, but I did know I've seen you in something before. And usually first screening in a movie, things are happening so quickly you can't really finish the image in your head. But when we got to her father, because I couldn't place the coroner, I wondered if that was the same actor who was playing the coroner. So I wondered, was her father pretending to be the coroner to kind of lead them to the bodies? And he's not. It's two different actors. But there was a very similar look and even skull shape between the two men. That was a point where I was just, I don't know if it worked to the movie's favor. It didn't feel like an intentional red herring. I think it was just an unfortunate bit of casting, but it whatever. But when you talk about uninteresting characters, I think is where I'm coming back to her father. That's what bothers me about the climax the most also, is the fact that we're giving so much space on the page now, because he does not stop talking, to the most uninteresting character who's been on screen the entire movie, and really the entire trilogy up until this point. I'd watch any other character in all of these movies then before I would want to see him, because he is so predictable, and because he is there were, again, I was torn after my initial screening, thinking well, maybe it's just style, maybe it's not supposed to be all that deep, and maybe it's supposed to just be largely big and block letters and the big light overhead and the the imagining of the potential life that's waiting for you and everything like that. Maybe it's supposed to feel epic but a little empty. And watching it the second time around, that's what made me dislike it even more, is because I felt a missed opportunity to really give MaXXXine her due. I don't think she's completely without agency in the climax, but the fact that there's a character who I've watched, the way she handled Buster in the alley, and the way she handled I forget Kevin Bacon's character's name, but Kevin Bacon, the detective,
John Labette.
There you go. The way she handles Labette, when she pulls her keys out and just starts punching him.
Oh, that was
I'm
great.
Just I know. Great. I was just kind of that's my MaXXXine. Yeah. And then the way she led him through the club, which felt very Fright Night to me, just the Chris Sarandon seducing Amanda Bierce and other nighttime telly movies as well. I was just kind of this is awesome. And then to see how on her side MaXXXine's lawyer and her co-worker, friend, and whatever he looked like he was kind of a bouncer, kind of a crew member in the porn and everything like that. That character, the way that she trusted them enough to have them help her to take this guy out in a major way, and it worked. All of that, everything about that sequence I actually really, really adored. It was only what happened afterward. But I was totally on board with it, and then we get to, you mentioned the absence of a reason. I feel like it was there. It was just done with the least amount of work possible, because all of a sudden she starts hearing the voiceovers. She hears herself first saying that line again, maybe they should save themselves. I did, but then she starts hearing all the other stuff and has that montage.
What was frustrating
that is
about
supposed
that,
to motivate her to help them.
Yeah, if you're thinking of the giallo subgenre. There's typically a scene towards the end that a lot of the movies kind of play with the idea of memory, and it's always there's something that might happen at the beginning that then needs to be unlocked in the main character's brain so they can solve the case. And we saw this. Right. I think the best example is probably Deep Red, where the character sees a painting, at this murder scene, and then it's like it's missing, after the cops get there, and it's sort of like this. It leads him on this trail through like a lot of like lead to lead while like the killer is like several steps ahead of him, and then it's just like at the end he realizes what it actually is. And it just felt like this moment that was insulting to the audience, because Maxine's realization was each one of those three girls saying, oh, there's this party at this producer's house, like just under the Hollywood sign. And it's like, we knew that, like, we as an audience knew that from the beginning. So it's like, I didn't feel like I was discovering anything with Maxine. It was more of just like, I've been several steps ahead of her. And her, like, making that realization right now undermined her as a character in Final Girl. And it was even more frustrating as the fact that, like I said earlier, she was given this address way earlier in the film. She decided to disregard it, and then it wasn't until the end where she's like, oh, I guess I'll go check this out now. So it's like, this all could have been dealt with. Like, that's the thing, when the movie could reached its climax way earlier, and instead you've chosen to go through all this bullshit. And that's what I feel like most of the stuff with Kevin Bacon is. It's just like, it's not like, I don't feel there was any tension, like when he was chasing her on the lot and she, went and hid in the Psycho house and all that. It was just I wanted so much more from that, especially like seeing it in the trailer, like the Psycho house. But eventually, like the scene that you're talking about where she's in the club and she's sort of like wooing him, I just felt like there was such a missed opportunity with that character, with Kevin Bacon. And I was not expecting that to be his death there. I was waiting for like, whoa, wait, I'll tell you what you need to know. And then them stopping. And I mean, even though that would have been really cliche, it's just like, when you have Kevin Bacon, stealing the show like he does, like, don't waste him for most of the movie and then just have him there to like, kill him off in this pedestrian sort of way, just to sort of move on, because that didn't advance the plot forward. That felt like it's cut off that thread. It stopped the movie at that point, and then it was like, oh wait, that address and like this party at the Hollywood Hills and yada yada yada. Okay. So it just like it felt like two very disconnected things, and that's what this movie was. It just felt very unfocused, and it just meandered through these different threads that were connected, but also were so disconnected at the same time, just to eventually get to what was going to happen anyway at the end. And
that's why I think this is less evocative of a Giallo film for me, because I didn't get at all like a direct line of influence from Giallo films to this. I felt like this film was influenced by American movies from the 80s that were influenced by Giallo, but kind of didn't know how to execute it. They didn't have the mastery that a Dario Argento would have in executing, these feats of cinema. I mean,
even Argento didn't execute all of his finales all that well.
Of course.
But sure, I mean, if you're telling me that Ty West was so committed to honing in on a specific kind of movie that he's imitated it right down to all of its faults to make a very flawed movie. It's what got me through
my initial screenings of Scriptorum, because I felt like they were making a commentary, and I said this in our pod discussion about that. I felt like they were making commentary about like remakes and reboots and
they absolutely were. But I feel that the thing, we've talked about this, but the thing with Scream 4 is that, like, had they not taken out so much of the material and left the additional footage in, it would have been, had a stronger through line. It would have made more sense.
Sure.
But I don't feel that Wes Craven made that movie with the intention of like, here's like the shittier of like the two avenues that we can go down, and this is what you're going to accept because it's like thematically correct. Like, I think that that movie went through a lot of production issues as it was being made, before it was being made, after it was being made, to come to what it was. So I think it was always, they had the intention in mind to make that or like the best possible version that they could, and it just didn't happen that way. But with this, I can't in good faith like believe that like Ty West was just like,
well,
they made a shitty movie, so I'm gonna make a shitty movie.
Well, this is the thing. Two things. It takes me back to my James Wan parallel, because do I know if that's the case? No. It's just something occurred to me while I was watching the movie that helped me enjoy it more. So I went, all right, I'll take this and I will run with it. And that's what I did the initial screening of MaXXXine. It worked to a lesser degree the second time around. If I give it a little bit more time, who knows? But ultimately, I think, and I've observed this in other movies. I can't think of any titles at the moment right now because my head is just swimming with titles. But I know I've seen movies where they attempt to achieve an effect by kind of like really immersing you in something that will stimulate that effect, that response as an audience. Now, you run the risk as a filmmaker of immersing your audience in like your world that you've created, or your main character, your protagonist's experience, or whatever. Like if you're trying to get across like the monotony of what it is to wait for something by making an audience sit there and wait through a monotonous time, you're walking a really fine line of putting them in your protagonist's shoes or immersing them in the world, of the movie you're creating, and at the other end of the spectrum, completely losing them and boring them because what's on screen is monotonous, And I feel like if there is any truth to anything that I am saying, that I'm alleging as to like what Ty West could have been putting up on screen when he put this together, because that's another thing. I've seen Ty West achieve like these incredible, like I said, feats of cinema in the past that I can't help but feel like, is there an intention? There has to be. Was there mindlessness? It just feels like I'd rather ask that question than just kind of dismiss it and attribute it to studio meddling or anything like that. I'd want to try and solve it as best I can in my head. And I think, again, because even that's the thing with this movie, is even the very, very end, I love the kind of tongue-in-cheek chuckle I get to give myself while they're all standing around in a circle before this day of shooting this next Puritan flick that they're going to do. That now we know that MaXXXine is collaborating with Liz, and we haven't talked enough about Liz. We'll get to her, but with I love it. They all kind of like, Liz decides to like have everybody share a moment of silence, memorializing Molly and everything like that, and that they do it. Everybody is solemn, everybody is quiet, everybody is patient, and after a while, people start looking up at each other like, "Are we done? We do have a lot to shoot today. Are we going to get going?" And then finally she's like, "Okay," and then everybody relaxes and goes right to it.
She looks at the assistant director,
AD,
and because she kind of gives this look, it just like.
Right.
And then he's like, "Okay, everyone." So it's like,
right.
So she didn't have to be the one to be,
of course,
like, all right,
break
wrap it up.
But there's a little bit of humor there, and I feel like it's alluded to also with even just the bond that seemed to be moving toward being built between Molly in A Moment of Kindness with MaXXXine when she's at her, Star Wagon door, and she's just giving her all this advice and, dispelling this myth that surrounded Liz before MaXXXine got to meet her, which I would really appreciated the fact that better watch out for this one, and then it's just a woman doing her job. Mm-hmm. And MaXXXine could recognize that, and then having Molly tell her, "Yeah, she's great. Yeah. She'll be loyal to you if you show up and you do your work and all that." And yet, in this incredibly seemingly genuine and sincere moment, the last thing that Molly says to her, does she call her, what was it, Justine, or what? She got her name wrong. Yeah. Nadine. She gets her name wrong, which immediately just kind of like cuts it. It just cuts the sincerity and any kind of saccharine quality that moment could have had. Even a genuineness, I'm just going to like, yeah, that's life in the big city, kid. Mm-hmm. And so little things like that I appreciate. Yet then we watched like the severed head of MaXXXine, like the special effects severed head, like on the bed, and then it's still. And it remains still, and I'm waiting for something to happen. I'm wondering, is this an allusion to Friday the 13th Part 3, or no, part 2, where the head is just sitting there. We're waiting for something to happen, and initially the plan was for the eyes to open, but it looked too cheesy, so they didn't do it. So the head is just still, and we're just holding on it, and that's what's going on. But then we pull back, and we pull out of the soundstage, and we go up past the MaXXXine on the Hollywood Hills, and I'm like, oh, that's fun. Then we continue to go up, and I'm thinking, oh, are we going up to the heavens? Where are we going? And then we go up into space, and I'm like, what is this? Is this the next movie? MaXXXine in space? Like, what is happening? I completely lost, again, I lost the thread. I didn't know that a 4th movie was coming. I'm incredibly discouraged to hear that, because while it might provide an opportunity to clean up after this movie, I don't need another movie. I really don't.
I didn't need the 5 endings.
Right?
That's one. I was happy to have it end like that night. You know, like we talked about this. Like it's like you don't need the ambulance scene. You don't need the dream scene. You don't need the like a month later or whatever. And then it was like, okay, she's in her trailer, and it's almost like this is the full circle moment. Like we first met her when she was looking in the mirror, and she you know said you're a fucking sex symbol or whatever it was, and now here she's like, you're a fucking movie star, and that would have been the end. But no, now we got to go inside the studio, and there's that whole thing, and it felt like we were ramping up. It's just like you know end your movie on a when your adrenaline is up here, because that's the last thing you remember, and you walk out of a movie, and like, tell me if this is true for anyone listening or watching, how many movie experiences have you had where like the movie ends like on a high, like a really high octane note, and you walk out of that thinking, holy shit, that was great, versus a movie where you'll have that moment, but then there's a lull, and it just sort of like continues to lull down, and then you end the movie and you're kind of like, okay, you know, like just a different perspective of that. Which do you lean towards? Like, what are your best movie experiences? But that's what it felt like to me. It's just like they kept having to have these like mirrors, and there's so many different things that she's like, my daddy always said, because you know when she was having that like flash forward, and it was like something about just like never give up, like just keep going after your dreams or work hard or whatever. And it's like, okay, so your daddy said that, then he also said, I will not accept the life I do not deserve. And then MaXXXine says, you're a fucking movie star. And then after all that, she says, I just don't want it to end. So it's like, how many fucking quotes do you got to get in there? By the way, here's a positive. How excited were you at the beginning when you got the quote?
The Betty Davis quote.
Yeah, well, it didn't say it was Betty Davis yet, because it just showed the quote, and then it said Betty Davis, and it was something about like until you're
not a star until people think you're a monster,
something like that. Yeah. And I felt like, oh, we're in for a treat.
I did too, and even that, I have to say, like, I understand we got it back in that sequence I just described before the end credits. When we start to get the Betty Davis eyes, okay, I'm going to make a full disclosure here. I've never liked that song. I've never felt like it evokes the memory or the feel or what I love about Betty Davis at all. And yet I remember even in her life, Betty Davis was still alive when that song got released. I remember seeing her appear on like Phil Donahue or, you know, like other talk shows and stuff like that. And they'd play it as her entrance music. And then when they'd say goodbye to her, they'd play it as her exit music and everything. And I'd just be like, and she seemed fine with it. You know, she seemed to have a good attitude. Just kind of like, oh, of course, people write songs about me. But
there was one there. She met Kim Carnes.
Yeah,
who sings it, and Kim said something to her like very flippantly, just like almost like, oh, it's so like great to, like, you know, the my song sort of thing, like, you know, it's almost like what came first, the chicken or the egg. It's just like her song like predates Betty Davis or something, and Betty was just like, you know, didn't know what to do with that, so it was just sort of like maybe offended.
I think it's because they had the Betty Davis quote up front, and because the movie's set in the 80s, and it's just kind of like, oh, well, that's a logical, you know, song to plug in there. I loved a lot of the other songs they put in, though. Like, I was all about, like, the you're my obsession, you're my obsession. I almost started, like, swaying. But this is the thing. Like, I feel like I saw the first time I saw it with Boy Cried Wolf, and he mentioned something about style when we walked out of it, and I said, I feel like it's more than just style. Style has dimension to it, but I felt like this was, again, a word I've already said, but atmosphere, environment, and I feel like all of that was created successfully. It made me remember, maybe you can help me out, I can't remember the title of this fucking horror movie, but with all of the Hollywood, even with like down to the Charlie Chaplin and the Wonder Woman and the Buster Keaton on the streets of Hollywood at night in the 80s, it evoked memories of a movie I cannot fucking remember the title of. And it's about a kid who lives with his mother, maybe 19, 20, and lives with his mother, and she's horrible, but he goes and he just immerses himself in movies, and he's in love with classic movies. And he starts killing people, but he starts dressing up as like figures from those classic movies. So like in one kill, he'll be like Humphrey Bogart. In another kill, he'll be like Dracula. And in another, do you know the movie I'm talking about? Oh God, it's so fucking good. And especially like all of those sidewalk scenes where you just like see marquees and blinking lights on the street. The atmosphere created, I was just kind of like, it's making me remember that fucking movie, and I can't remember it right now. Really good movie. If anybody knows, please DM me. Remind me what this movie I love is called.
You mentioned the soundtrack, and I actually have a gripe. Surprise, surprise. But we're gonna get some more positive things before we end the episode. But the marketing for the movie. So the scene that was shown, I think it was like, get your tickets, like tickets on sale now. And it was the scene where MaXXXine comes out of the soundstage and she kind of walks past all the girls sitting there, and she just turns to them and says, y'all might as well go home because I just fucking nailed it. And the one is like gay gasp. She's like, which is so like fantastic. And I love that moment.
Yes.
And like the trailer, that scene specifically, it was playing Obsession, but it was very like, it was like underscored so you could hear the dialogue, and then it like then she got in her car and it started like blasting the music a lot louder, and it's like, get your tickets for MaXXXine, and there's like the driver's license. And in the movie they're playing ZZ Top, I forget which song it is, but it's so loud.
So I can keep going.
The music is like, it's whoever like mixed in the sound or the soundtrack did not do a great job, because I was straining my ears to hear that. I was excited for that scene because I saw it in the commercial. I'm like, okay, I want to see it in this scene now. And the music is so loud when she says that you could barely hear any of it. You don't even hear the gay gasp from that one girl. And it's just like, why are you playing this music so loud to the point where you can't even hear stuff? And even like towards the end, like in the infamous, like the killer reveal scene when the father is, pontificating all the reasons why, the score there is just like, it's so sharp that you can't even hear what he's saying, because it's like the score is doing all the work. Tyler Bates scored this, by the way. He did the previous two as well. The score for Pearl is phenomenal. And I don't want to say that the score is bad here, but it's just like the way that it was mixed in, like the levels were not right. And it was both times I saw it, I heard from other people, or one other person who said the same thing, that this was a complaint. So I just wanted to kind of point that out, because you mentioned the soundtrack and the music, because that did bother me.
Right. Okay. It was ZZ Top's "Gimme All Your Lovin'."
Yes.
Was the song, and I just found the title. Okay, the title of the movie I was described is called "Fade to Black."
Oh, okay.
We should cover it on this pod. It was a fucking trip. I mean, I don't know. Again, largely atmospheric. I don't remember a lot of plot, but when you just kind of think of it as like a psychological,
I mean,
cornucopia. Like
I can do atmosphere, and actually, I watched Inferno last night, that Dario Argento, and that's another movie that has no fucking plot. Like it's not one that I enjoy a lot. Like I'd probably put it on the same level as this, just in terms of like a score, mostly for the production value and just like how great it looks. But it was just sort of like, not that I would compare the two, but I'm just got a similar feeling of just like there's no story here. There's probably more of a story in MaXXXine, but it just felt like we're meandering through a lot. Like, I'm getting really restless. Like, I just want to get to the end of the movie. Let's keep going. Nothing that happens is really kind of, maybe more so in that one, like, things are somewhat a cause and effect for what happens, but like definitely not here. Like the one scene, like the whole thing with the videotape of like the police evidence with that she gets delivered to her apartment.
Yes.
Because first she's hiding it from her friend. And
Yes.
I don't even remember that character's name. That's how little, like...
Leon. I love Leon.
See, I didn't even... The name. Where was the name? But they probably said it, but it just, like, it got lost to me. Like, he left an impression, but, like, it just, like, that... Like, his purpose and their relationship, it just, like, did not. Because she brings the videotape to the store, and she's just like, is there a way you can track this? And he's just like, why, what's on it? She's like, none of your business or whatever. But then he's like, yeah, I'll look into it. Nothing came of that.
Right.
And I don't even know if that was like the reason why he was targeted, because he was looking into it, or he was just targeted. Because there's a weird thing that happens in that scene where someone comes into the store who's not the killer. And we don't, like, it cuts back to her reading the script. So we don't know what they ask. But he says, I don't know where you heard that. I don't do that anymore. And we're closed now. And then you see people like being ushered out of the store. So I don't know if that was like they were propositioning him to do some sort of gay porn or something.
I don't know.
I just assumed that those were like part of like the father's disciples, and they were just distracting him while the dude crept up behind him from the back. But it's just like there was a lot that was just like where like this is a scene that could have been removed in terms like the one with the videotape because it didn't serve any purpose getting the videotape, like things like that. So I'm not gonna gripe on that. I want to say good things about MaXXXine now.
This will give you a rough idea for what it was like to kind of coast into the movie for me, because like we already mentioned, like there's another thing I tiny gripe.
Yeah.
The opening sequence with like little Mia Goth, and again, maybe this is like cluing me in. Like I really felt it the second time around that like, is this Ty West like wink wink nudge nudge? Look how unsubtle this is, because we've got little girl MaXXXine, Maxine Miller, like sitting there going like he's like, and tell people what about Jesus and whatever, and she's just like, and then they say it together, I will not accept a life I do not deserve. Say it again, I mean it, so Jesus can hear you, whatever he says. And I'm like, okay, this is not subtle at all. Like she's staring down the barrel of the camera and just kind of like giving like like the thing that she's gonna say before she's got the gun pointed at her father, and they say it together, and oh god, I'm exhausted just reliving it. Anyway,
we're talking to say nice things.
We are. The little girl who played her, though, I thought she nailed the ping of Mia Goth's voice. I thought she had that wonderful kind of like little quality that she had, and I was like, oh,
maybe that's
perfect.
her real voice.
Maybe.
Is that your real accent?
They've just cast her perfectly, yeah. But and then of course everything about the audition, I appreciated the fact that like she was off book, that when she bared her breasts, she held the gaze of like every single one of the people across those tables, just to like show them like how unfazed she was by it.
Yeah. Oh, that whole scene was. That might have been one of the best in the movie.
That was aces. It was a great way.
And also the parallel to the Pearl of it all with the judges.
It even said X Factor.
Yeah,
as she left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was great. Yeah,
because
the whole thing, like, do you mind showing us your breasts? Like, of course she's not going to mind. Like, you just talked about how she was in porn, but it's, she's delivering that monologue and she's like tearing up. And they're like, amazing. Very nice. And she's like, thank you. Do you mind showing us your breasts? She's like, no.
Yeah, not even a thought, just no.
I liked that they went back to it later on. Like we saw like the part after where she's like, y'all better cast me in this movie.
Because I'm a star.
Yeah. So it's nice to see that, and they're just like, why is that?
Yeah, I mean, in relation to the other movies, as far as an arc is concerned, it's nice to see, or let's put it this way: the idea of a movie where MaXXXine wins, succeeds, that's another reason why I'm kind of like, well, what is another movie going to be about? Because Pearl was basically kind of like about her spiraling downward, and because Pearl is, for all cause and effect, like a movie monster, I'm okay with that. It doesn't mean I don't sympathize with her. I mean, I've sympathized with Frankenstein. I sympathize with the Wolfman. I even sympathize with Jason Voorhees. But that's who she is in X. She is the movie monster of that movie. If anything, MaXXXine is an anti-heroine, like an anti-hero, but she is a final girl, by all standards and practices. Like, that is who she is. So watching her struggle and watching her succeed and watching her, win at the end of this movie, like, I'm really, really kind of cool with it in theory. The execution, especially towards the end, not so much. But now I'm just kind of like, well, then what was all this about? What is the next movie going to be about? I can't think of a way to come up with a fourth movie that is going to make me appreciate this movie more, except by comparison, which is what I really don't want. I don't want to like a movie from this now franchise that it's going to be, to make me go, really? I don't want to walk away from it, because I didn't do that with this one. With this one, there is a lot to praise, and we'll keep going on with that. But I loved Leon, number one, just because I was just kind of like, why aren't there more representations of queer horror fans? Thank you for giving us the guy who knows the genre and who can identify, she quizzed him and said name 5 horror people in horror movies who became major stars. Yeah. And he's John Travolta, Jamie Lee Curtis, Brooke Shields, Demi Moore, and then she's just like, and MaXXXine fucking Mank, and I'm like, yeah, awesome.
Of course I gotta go, and I'm MaXXXine fucking Minx.
Exactly.
Sydney.
And then after that, we went back to a nice little harken back to X with, and I don't remember, was there split screen in Pearl? Maybe. Yeah. But I remember, yeah. So we got more split screen, but more De Palma nod and everything like that. But then also with the fade to black, and then the fact that she was standing on at one point Theda Bara's star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, dropped a cigarette on it and stomped it out on Theda Bara's thing. Here all she wants to do is, before she was a sex symbol, now she wants to be a star. Theda Bara was both, but now she's forgotten except for people stepping on her fucking star and putting their cigarettes out on it. So again, it finishes that thing.
Is also Theda is also the name of the alligator in Pearl.
I forgot about that. Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I love that the first kill of the movie is that man's scrotum, that Buster gets it. And
the gore effects
I got my girl.
Are so good in this.
Oh yeah, I felt every punch, every stomp, every one of those things.
Yeah.
But I even appreciated, again, that sequence I appreciated because it felt very nighttime telly, but it also gave me my MaXXXine. I was like, this is the MaXXXine I want. Now this is the thing. After that is the first time that she gets disarmed by the past, and I think it was when, what was the first time that she thought about Pearl? It wasn't when she had the mask being made over her face.
I think it's when she. No, it might have been. Well, I remember she remembers when she goes to start the car and the. Now I'm misremembering.
Wait, I think I remember. No, because I remember right after she stomped on the guy's scrotum and took out Buster.
Yeah.
I loved the juxtaposition because the next scene she's laying there in Leon's lap or stomach, basically, and I like that. I'm like, oh, but there are some people she trusts. It's not about, and fuck all men, but it's no, fuck you because you're a piece of trash. But this guy, he's my friend. I depend on him, and I feel I can be disarmed around him. I like that. But I think while she was laying there, that's when she had the
videotape.
Wait, did she? She got the videotape. Yeah. She put it in. She saw, and that's when she got all weird, and she went over and everything. Oh, okay, so that it wasn't Pearl necessarily. It was just the past. She got immobilized watching her old porn on the VHS, and I remember thinking that's the first domino where. Because after that, every time she has so many little examples that I think are supposed to set up her final confrontation with her father, because that's what pissed me off when she came across her father finally, and he put the plastic bag over her head. Did you think the same thought I did? Just poke a fucking hole.
Yes.
In the bag.
Yes. In any movie that happens, it's just because that's what I would do. I would just go.
I mean, I understand if you're just alone, and if I were just sitting here, just talking to you, and I couldn't see myself in, you know, in the playback in the Skype, and somebody just pulled a bag over my head, I'd probably panic first and not think logically. But this is the thing: when you've already seen, there is someone who I am terrified of, who is standing across from me, who dismembered someone in a suitcase that just tumbled down the stairs. The second they try to incapacitate me, aren't I going to fight back with everything? And even if I weren't, if that's not the most natural thing to happen, if I'm a final girl, isn't that the most natural thing for me to do? I lost my MaXXXine thread there.
Another thing was the face mold, the head mold, because all I could think was, shouldn't she have like straws in her nose?
Straws,
because it's just like she's just like, it's like you're putting this thing. She's not breathing for 10 minutes. Like this goes against every regulation. That girl should have been fired from that production immediately. Like it was just fucking ridiculous.
And the fact that she just left her alone, I mean, what if she needs something? What if she has to use the restroom? Like, you should have someone there with you, no matter how long it takes for it. Like, just
they were even more ethical
so
about that in Hollow Man when they were pouring that cheese whiz over his face. Kevin Bacon.
Yeah, right. I thought the same thing.
Yeah, but no, I thought that for the head mold, and also the plastic bag of just like, what is this? Come on.
But I really appreciated the presence of Elizabeth Bender, Liz, the director. I liked that she felt like a legitimate artist in an illegitimate town, knew exactly where she was, who she was, and what she was trying to do, and who she had to please in order to do it. And that when she saw MaXXXine, she saw a teammate, a potential teammate. It wasn't like, now I'm going to mentor you and embrace you and give you everything you need in the way of like a maternal kind of like pathfinder or anything like that. But like, I could, but this, if you fuck me over, you need to know I have no problem sending you away. It just gave MaXXXine this treatment as an adult, as a professional, with respect, that I loved seeing on screen.
Did you notice that? I mean, not that to say that there was no attempt to kind of like infuse a murder mystery aspect into this, but when she's sitting there, the director at the casting table, she's got the coat on, and like the collar popped up.
You know what?
But they very quickly, like in the movie, they established like this is a man. So that takes out any kind of mystery as to like, what is the gender of this killer?
Yeah, I that was one thing. I don't know if it was a deal breaker for people. I wonder if it was for a lot of people who felt like the third act spoiled it, because it was not a surprise at all that it was her father. Like, I literally was doing the math probably about the first third into the movie, wondering, who is this person? And I thought, well, it can only really be her father, right?
I honestly, I didn't even think about it, because I was just so like detached from the mystery aspect of it, because I just knew that it's not going to be anything like this is something that's been completely abandoned. It's going to be something completely unspectacular, and I mean, most of the movie I was just like, can we just get to the end already? Can we just figure it out?
I mean, I had more fun watching her interact with Teddy, for sure, her lawyer, especially when she had already punched Kevin Bacon with the keys and then went to him and talked about the threats and everything, and the fact that he planted a flag in her career and basically said, this is ours, no one's going to take it from us, you do your job, and I'm going to take care of this.
I liked his assistant.
Yeah,
she was funny.
Oh, I thought you meant his assistant later. I forget, it's the same actor who played like The Rock in that.
No, I'm talking about the
you mean
lady,
his executive assistant.
His secretary.
Okay, no, I she was great. She was fun, but I preferred the tall gentleman with the dogs.
Cool.
I don't remember his name.
Yeah.
I don't remember anyone calling him by his name.
What do you and just because we should probably wrap this up soon, but what do you make of the whole Bates Motel set? I
mean, okay. I mean, I've worked on these backlots, so the second those doors opened in the beginning to the soundstage, I was just kind of like, oh, that's Warner Brothers, because all of the sound stages there have a much more tannish paint outside of them, whereas you go to Sony, you go to Paramount, you go to Universal, they're all kind of like white gray. So I was just kind of like, oh, okay, she's in Warner Brothers. So then when they're supposed to be on the same exact lot, and Liz is driving her to the Bates Motel house, I'm like, so we drove from Warner Brothers to Universal, we drove from Burbank to Universal City on that little golf cart. That's hilarious. But I realized we're in, Tinseltown. It's supposed to be movie studio, nowhere in particular. So I'm like, okay, cool. But know that there are some people who are going to know, that you're, because even when she was running, that was one thing that made me think about Scream 3. In the opening of Scream 3, when Liv Schreiber's, driving all over Hollywood, and 1 minute he's in Griffith Park and he turns a corner, then he's at Hollywood and Highland, and I'm like, I know where those two places are. There is no way he was going to get there like that. And then with this, I was just kind of like watching Maxine outrun Kevin Bacon like down the steps of the clock tower from Hill Valley and Back to the Future. Turn a corner, she's at the Bates Motel and the Psycho House. So that was all hilarious because I know where they are in relation to each other, and I was like, no, that doesn't work. I mean, the connective tissue with the psycho of it all from X and everything like that, I appreciated, and the weight of it I certainly felt, because there is Psycho straddles that line of like legitimate filmmakery and horror picture. It's got both of them. And I'm trying to think of a classic film that encapsulates both so perfectly simultaneously. So I mean, I liked it, but I wasn't going it was just okay, cool. One more thing, what did you think?
Well, I liked the pearl in the window in Mrs. Bates' window. I just thought it was silly that, here we are, we're like pulling up, and then the director's like, this is the motel where they shot Psycho. I'm like, yes, it is. Way to state the obvious.
They just filmed a sequel, if you can believe it. I liked that line.
Well, yeah, because this would have taken place in 1985. Before I was born. But they would have 83 was Psycho 2. So Psycho 3 was just around the corner.
Just around the corner. So Tony Perkins should have been standing out there with Jay Fahey waving at trams.
Yeah. They should have been like, they're about to make a third one. Yeah.
Yeah, right. That would have been so cool. See, all of that shit I would have appreciated. But I mean, again, it worked as far as like what it needed to for the film. I hope it doesn't sound like I hate this film, because I don't. It's just like, it's hard to talk about what you dislike about a film, I realize, without it sounding like you dislike the film. What is that?
You know what? We've been doing it for like over 100 episodes now. But you mentioned Scream 3. There are a lot of parallels, because even the chase through the set, very Sydney Ghostface.
In
the Sunrise
true.
Studios. Even the you're a star, Sydney the star, Roman.
I feel like we could do a whole discussion about Sydney outrunning her past and Maxine outrunning her past, and why one works better than the other one. You can guess which one is which. But I mean,
here's a question: Does this make you appreciate Scream 3 more?
I always appreciate Scream 3. I mean, on the whole, not a perfect film, but Sydney's, we said this, Sydney's arc is golden in that film. That's what it's about. That's what it is about.
Whereas here, that Maxine doesn't really have one.
I mean, I can see it. It's paper thin. Like, I can see what it's supposed to be. I can see the indicators along the way of, like, what they were going for. The only reason I feel anything for the character is because of Mia Goth and her performance, because I don't think she phones in 1 minute of her screen time.
Not at all. It's a phenomenal performance, and I think that's enough to kind of distract from everything that's missing there. I did think it's funny that Mia Goth was quoted saying that this was, in her opinion, the best story that Ty West wrote of this trilogy, and all I could think of was Jamie Lee Curtis collecting that payday, just being like, oh, Halloween Resurrection, best movie. Halloween 2018, no, this is the best one. Kills, we outdid ourselves. Halloween Ends is the one to beat.
I'm actually kind of hoping that they can't get it together to make a fourth movie. This is the thing. I want Ty West to make more movies.
Yeah.
I want Mia Goth to make more movies. That's one thing. Okay, I'll say this in closing.
Okay.
Mia Goth, like, X came and went, and I felt like everybody was showing me her picture in their stories because everybody was showing the X poster and then their little review or whatever. Mm-hmm. I'm like, okay, cool. Pearl came, and we're all like, oh my God, Oscar for Mia Goth. She has, she's amazing. She's landed. She's blah, 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 blah. Because performance, actress, talent. We love her. Justifiably so. This movie, what I'm seeing in my Instagram stories, if there's a trend now, I'm seeing multiple people come forward and do not their Pearl or their MaXXXine impressions. They're doing their Mia Goth impressions. And like Mia Goth at the coffee house, or Mia Goth winning an Oscar, or Mia Goth welcoming you to her house, Mia Goth with a gardening show, whatever. And I'm just kind of like, oh, this is interesting. So Mia Goth in and of herself is becoming a thing. I think she is finally, ironically enough, a fucking star, not just a great actress and somebody who we admire, but people who aren't in the know are going to know who she is now. So good for her.
Yeah. Totally. All right. Well, with that said, let's get to the cherry picker.
It's not like we killed people. On purpose.
So, Edward, who's our cherry on top?
After everything I just said, really?
Well, I mean, I think that there's a very strong case for Kevin Bacon.
Against Mia Goth?
Well, here's the thing. And because this is a double-edged sword. Like I said, I think the character was bullshit, but the performance was really excellent.
Oh my God.
And it's the same thing, and it's not the character. It was just the script with MaXXXine, because like great performance. What was that? What was all that with her? So I mean, okay, if you feel strongly towards to MaXXXine, then sure, but
this is Mia Goth erasure, and I will.
It's not erasure. It's I feel that. Anyway, okay. Moving on.
If you feel that strongly about it, I will just take a step back.
Well, no, it's a mutual decision.
Is it though?
What's that?
Is it though?
Am I RuPaul? Am I whatever I say goes?
I mean, at the end of the day, your name is the one, on the tin, as they say. You're the brand.
We're giving it to MaXXXine.
Okay, thank you.
We weren't doing the cherry picker.
Not for X,
the cherry on top.
No, we were doing the cherry on top for X. I don't remember. I didn't listen to all of our Pearl episodes, so I don't remember if.
It would have been Pearl.
Okay.
Pearl.
Okay.
For X, I mean, I think we just retroactively said Mia Goth, like for both of them.
Yeah. Or all the women, like, I mean, Jenna Ortega and Brittany Snow in X are still remain incandescent in their performances in that movie. So I'd give it to the crown, the triad.
Well, it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way.
Okay, so last week we asked you who deserves to die the most in Alien. I nominated Kane. You nominated Ash across Patreon, Instagram, and YouTube. The final vote came to 75 for Kane versus 488 for Ash. No surprise there.
Oh my God, this is so unexpected.
You're right, yeah. Sean Prinsick, really? Ash was a perverted robot who tried to kill Sigourney with a porno magazine. Kane may have kind of been an idiot sticking his face so close to the egg, but this was before those tropes were as well known. I've actually met Tom Scared and Veronica Cartwright. Veronica's super lovely with a lot of spunky energy. Scared is kind but low energy. Hate to step on anyone's toes, but I've always been more of a fan of Aliens than Alien. Also, I never fully understood the general vibes of the crew until I was in the Navy. Now I understand the working environment in Aliens so much more.
Wow, good for you.
10B Spencer, or 10BS Spencer. 1 million times Ash. He's terrifying and a lackey for Wayland Yutani. Kane was stupid. but he didn't necessarily deserve to die.
Uh-oh.
Blue box. The obvious choice would be Ash, but if Kane hadn't messed around with alien eggs and everyone else had listened to Ripley, then there wouldn't be a franchise.
That's true.
Wolfman's got nards. I had to go with the only living person on the list. Sorry. So I guess that's a Kane.
Well, wait. So John Hurt? What? I don't understand. Okay, go on.
Oh.
Because John Hurt played Kane, and he's no longer with
Oh,
us.
so is that what that meant in terms of like
I don't know.
the actor?
Sometimes I
We
just don't know
need
what
we need elaboration.
Yeah, we need clarity.
Baby Ghoul. I am conflicted on this one. I want to pick Kane because, come on, don't put your face that close to an alien life form. And Ash was programmed to carry out a specific mission that it most likely couldn't override. But I also like being on the winning team. And I don't see Kane getting cherry picked, so gotta go with Ash, I guess. Huh?
Oh my god.
Don't like being on the losing team, eh? Thomas Baker. I choose Ash. I am Solomon. It's been a minute since I rewatched the original. Aliens barely edges it as my favorite, but from the franchise, but it might be headcanon. I always thought Ash was tasked with moving the crew into the position to receive the signal that led them to the eggs that started the whole thing. Maybe that's me finding an excuse to link this to the failed prequels, but regardless, Ash gets the axe, blasts him out of the damn airlock if you have to. Silent Saturn. Unlike what's-his-face from Prometheus, Kane wasn't a scientist. He had no idea what those eggs were and was still overall more cautious. I don't really blame him for what happened. Gonna go with Ash, mostly because as a robot, he has no reason to be a misogynist, so that's just his preference, basically being an a-hole by choice on top of being an a-hole by design. Really, it should be Lambert, though. If I said it once, I said it 1,000 times. The manic, hysterical character always deserves the chop above all. I hate that trope. Rowena Potter. Ash for sure. Kane was just stupid touching something he shouldn't have and starting the chain reaction, but Ash is the one who set everything in motion for it to happen from behind the scenes and then pretended he was helping the rest of the crew. Really, the company should have been chosen. All those peeps need to go because they programmed Ash and are still doing shit in Aliens. Mm-hmm. Dan's Gaming. I picked Ash, but I also would have liked to see Ash fight the alien. Antonio G. Kane is an idiot for sticking his nose where it didn't belong, but Ash was a robot programmed to bring back an alien regardless what happens to the crew. So whether it was Kane's nosy self or someone else, that alien was getting on board thanks to Ash and more specifically the company who programmed him. Side note, yes, finally we have a pristine camera to capture Eddie's pristine face. Also, my favorite part of watching a movie in anticipation for the Cherry Picker podcast is trying to guess which line Eddie will use in the intro and which scene Zack will use to connect to the Scream franchise. Hey, LOL, keep up the great work, and thank you for being so consistent. That's you, wonderful. Antonio G.
Incredible.
Yeah, I do that a lot, don't I? Well, this is like Scream here because, you know.
I learned that about you pretty early on, and I remember I started to do it too. I think I did it for this episode, but
you did. We did. We both did.
We brought up Scriforum and Scream 3,
and Scream 6, and Scream 5,
and Scream 6.
2. I think that we just didn't bring up the first one.
We brought up everything except for the first one, which ironically is the one where Billy turns around and says, "We all go a little mad sometimes."
And now we brought it up, so we've covered all of them.
Hey, full circle! Yay!
Hamish. Ash, because he strikes me as the type of person who would replace actors with AI. And Marcus Connerly, I say Ash. His job led them to the danger of the eggs in the first place. Was Kane stupid for getting so close? Yes. Did he deserve a chest burster for it? I don't think so. Also, I agree with Eddie that you pronounce each X separately and don't use the triple in there when saying MaXXXine. It's not gonna deter me.
It's my own private little cherry picker in my soul.
Triple X-ine. Like Thregan.
No, Threegan makes sense because that's the way it's spelled. But there's no triple. It's just three of them, so you pronounce all three. MaXXXine.
Well,
Anyway,
would it be 30 then? Ma30ine?
No,
There's a lot of
MaXXXine.
different ways you can go. Okay.
There are a lot of things, but I think MaXXXine is the most fun.
But when you look at
Screevy.
that, you look at the triple X because not in this logo above, but like in the way that the movie is listed on IMDb, it's like capital M, lowercase a, uppercase X, uppercase X, uppercase X, lowercase INE.
Yeah.
So that's
that
triple X
that mean-
Ian.
No, but that means I just hit it like XXXXine, you know?
Yeah,
Like
you gotta
shout the X's. Like when you text and you do all caps, you shout.
Sure.
So
You
we're
got a
never going to see eye to eye
nomination?
on this.
What's your
But
nomination?
I also, that was one other thing. I love that the first X is X and that the third movie is max 3 X's.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, oh, nice. I see what you're doing. Okay. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to be surprised by this. I feel like the movie would have been greatly improved with a revision or just a revised even execution of this character. I want Ernest Miller, Maxine's dad, to be the one who deserves to die most because, again, I appreciate her acknowledging his role in her success. That said, he can never claim that. If he ever did, he'd be an asshole. When someone hurts you, traumatizes you, they don't get to then step in and go like, yeah, all of your success happened because of me. You can say, all of my success happened because I overcame the shit you put me through, asshole. I'm strong. You're a piece of shit. You deserve to die. He should have died. You know what? Every time the movie ended, he should have died again. That's how much he deserves to die. So that's my choice. What about you?
I'm gonna go for Buster in the alley there.
Oh.
Because, I mean, what the fuck? You know, what was that shit? He was like... That actually, other than the opening, that might have been my favorite scene, except for the cringy... Like, I winced both times.
Oh, yeah. I screamed out
But
loud the first time.
it was well-deserved. And I wonder if she did kill him after that. You know, we'll never know.
He could have bled out, like, you know. Yeah, you never know. But I think, actually, you know what? I thought it was cool doing what she did. Even if he didn't die, I'm like, best to just take the bullets out of the gun than just to try and keep people avoiding being shot by him. If you know what I mean, like, stomp on them, nards, take them out, take them out, no problem.
Well, those are your options. You can vote for, is it Ernest?
Ernest Miller.
Ernest Miller or Buster Keaton?
No, and that was another thing. I felt like, oh, poor Buster Keaton. His legacy is going to be a little tainted for the next. But then I thought he did make a movie where he was the protagonist and he was a soldier from the South during the Civil War. And I was like, oh, what's that about? It made the AFI top 100 list too. It's not.
Anyway, you can vote on Patreon, even if you're not supporting over there. It's open for everyone, but please go support us over there. You can vote on Instagram, that is at the Cherry Picker Pod, and you can also vote on the YouTube channel, the Cherry Picker. If you are new and you are watching us on YouTube, you can listen to us. The RSS feed link is in the descriptions down below if you prefer to take in your podcasts that way, or if you are listening to us and you want to see Edward's pristine video now that it's not a frozen block for the whole hour and a half, head over to YouTube and subscribe to us there. Edward, where can they find you on Soch?
Well, the usual places: Instagram, Letterboxd, YouTube, and TikTok maybe. Edward is Truth, one word, traditional spelling. How about you, Zack?
You can
Cherry?
find me on my main YouTube channel, Zack Cherry, ZACK space CHERRY. I'm on Instagram at Retro Bitchface and Letterboxd Zack Cherry. And Twitter, ZackCherry8. And also follow our movie, Macabre the movie, on Instagram.
Spelled
And
macabre.
and on Facebook. And on, Twitter. Coming to Kickstarter. And next week, I think we cover that. It's going to be drop dead gorgeous. we haven't figured out what the one after that is. So stay tuned for a surprise for our next regular episode. But until then, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And we will be right back.